if only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the hearts of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I have spent well nigh 50 years working on the history of our revolution. In the process, I have read hundreds of books, collected hundreds of personal testimonies, and have already contributed 8 volumes of my own toward the effort of clearing away the rubble left by that upheaval. But if I were asked today to formulate as concisely as possible the main cause of the ruinous revolution that swallowed up some 60 million of our people, I could not put it more accurately than to repeat, men have forgotten God. That is why all this has happened. That, once again, was Alexander Solzhenitsyn. The first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history, then have someone write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history. Before long, the nation will begin to forget what it is and what it was. The struggle of man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. And that is Milan Kundera. And this, folks, is all -1. Please like, share, sub, all that good stuff. Leave a comment. I'll probably address it, comment you back, unless it's really out there, or you're a bot trying to sell like live sex, whatever I get from time to time. That happens. Hasn't happened recently, but yeah. In any case, I try to engage with my audience if I can, when I can. So, please go ahead, leave a comment. Tell me you hate me if you hate me, but if you do, you're probably suffering from this. And this is really, really important to understand this. This is why I can't get on board with, Viva la Revolution. I can't get on board this idea of attacking the government. Of course, there's logical, tactical reasons why as well. But more importantly, I am about warning you all, allowing you to be prepared so that your souls will be prepared, so that mentally you will be able to handle what is coming. And not everyone's cut out to do such a thing, but I am, because I am obsessed knowing what is going on. Long before I started making YouTube videos this past summer, I was doing the same thing I'm doing now. I'm reading a lot, I'm absorbing a lot of information, I'm contemplating, I'm thinking, and I am structuring my arguments. So, with that, now, the biggest thing I'm doing is warning folks, and via my live show, trying to build an audience and make connections and alliances with like-minded, liberty-minded folk. And the whole point of this quote from Solzhenitsyn is something like this. We're all evil, and we're all good. And therefore, if you wish not to become evil, you must check your own soul. And he's saying that, obviously, one group, it can be seen as evil, which is what we do when we dehumanize people, we other them, versus another. But as I have called to you all week long, Monday and Tuesday at least, as I've made videos this week, we who are liberty-minded, we who wish for freedom, we who wish for peace, cannot stoop to the level of war. Because then we become no different than our enemies, and we get sucked into this. It is easy to post hoc justify any action that you may have. A very cogent point here that I believe was made at Templeton University back in 1983 during a speech while Solzhenitsyn was exiled from the Soviet Union after having been in the Gulag for many years. He did return to the Soviet Union after it fell. Interestingly, you know how the Soviet Union fell, folks? through peace. People decided to stop living the lie. They decided not to fight and to just give up their arms. And it fell through a war of information as they went through a cultural shift where censorship was no longer allowed. Do you understand now why censorship is so prevalent today? Because it is meant to control your mind. Those who control the information have the power. Those who control the information can control your mind. Go read again 1984. And I love it when lefties think that somehow 1984 is some sort of excuse for their communist utopia, because they are absolutely insane. And I mean that. They're ideologues, and Solzhenitsyn talks about this. And what has happened is men have forgotten God, and they have not gotten to the nitty gritty of who God is and what he wants for us. And what he says is to be principled, to be consistent. He knows that we will be imperfect. I am an imperfect being. I will mess up. And then he says, but if you do such a thing, you come to me and you ask for repentance. You know what repentance means? It means to change your mind, to renew it, to make it different. And he says to struggle and strive with him. Do you know what the word Israel means? Israel is he who wrestles with God. It is no dispensationalism to think that we are all part of Israel through the covenant that Christ made with us, that was born out of the covenant that he made with Abraham, who he renamed Abraham, the father of many nations. And he's not talking about these earthly nations, folks. He is talking about the nations of the world to come. But without getting too much further long in the tooth, I want to talk about Milan Kundera, because Solzhenitsyn is well known, but Kundera is lesser known. I believe I misspoke the other day and mentioned his name and saying he was from Yugoslavia. He is not. He's from the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia. But that happens when you have so much information in your head all the time. Sometimes you mix things up. As I just said, I am imperfect. But do not take every ounce of what I say as some sort of perfection, folks. Get the broader message. Understand what I'm trying to teach you. So let's read. This is from March 24, 2009. This is a little random blog that I found. Vanever, blogspot.com. And this is from March 24, 2009. And he talks about the struggle of a man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. And this is from the Book of Laughter and Forgetting. An interesting point I want to make very briefly. Do you understand why human beings laugh? Because I do. I know the answer to this. It's a philosophical question, of course, but it has deep ramifications for understanding the nature of mankind. It is something like this. Men laugh because things are utterly so horrible that they have nothing else to hold them up. That's why dark humor exists, folks. Things are gross and horrible, and we laugh with humor because they're so disgusting. That's the only way we can face them. The other reason, there's two reasons, is the flip side of that coin, and that is pure joy. If you've ever experienced pure joy, you will laugh just exceedingly. I had a very unique experience some years back where I was doing some bioenergetic type work in a martial arts seminar. So you do these things where you stand in certain stances and you breathe very hard through your mouth, and you end up hyperventilating. You put yourself in this very difficult position. Most of these exercises, I can't recall the doctor's name off the top of my head, but most of these exercises were developed by a protege of Carl Jung. In any case, and the instructor at the time, Alex Kostek, who is a Serbian who practices Russian martial arts and is quite a unique character. I like Alex very much. He started getting in front of my face and sticking his tongue out and doing whatever, and I just started cracking up with absolute hilarity. Like, I could not stop myself. I had the giggles for a good 5 minutes or more, uncontrollable. Just pure joy, a release of pure joy. And I had been going through a very, very difficult time. A friend of mine who has a third degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, um, began crying uncontrollably. So these things are within us and they happen. The point of the exercises was to release this energy within our caught within our beings, within our muscle fibers. I'm not going to get all into bioenergetics, but I want you to understand the basic idea that people laugh for a reason, because things are dark or because they are joyful, and that is it. And that should tell you a lot about humanity, and it tells us a lot about Kundera's book, The Book of Laughter and Forgetting. It says, Kundera's book tells 7 short stories, united by themes of power and forgetting. The first story, based on a true event, opens with 2 Czechoslovakian communist leaders, Klement Gottwald and Vladimir Clematis, standing together on a snowy Prague balcony in February 1948. Clematis graciously puts his warm fur hat on Gottwald's bare head, putting a cloth hat on his own head. The 2 men were photographed, and this became an iconic image of the Czechoslovakian Revolution. 4 years later, Clematis is purged from the Communist Party and hanged. He is eliminated from all official records, including the now famous photograph. All that is clearly left of Clematis is the photograph in his fur hat atop Gottwald's head. Everyone who remembered the story saw the fur hat on Gottwald and remembered Clematis and the willingness to revise the truth. Later, one of the characters in Kundera's novel refers to the story and says the struggle of man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. And here we have the quote again that I opened up with. The first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history, and then have somebody write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history. Before long, the nation will begin to forget what it is and what it was. The world around it will forget even faster. The struggle of man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. And it says the phenomenon is not unique to the Soviet system. I see this in my own experience as we move more of the historical record, our personal systems, our health records, and our financial records to digital systems, wikis, and the cloud. I think we are likely to see more of it rather than less. We are seeing more of it, folks. This is why being skeptical of technocracy and transhumanism and centralized power is healthy. Because those who control the past get to control the future. So, from American Digest, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary. Elsewhere of the day, Milan Kundera warned us about historical amnesia. Now it's happening. This was March 31st, 2019. By the way, folks, I have several articles. I'm not going to go through, but I'm going to have several articles about this. This was put in Quillette some years ago in 2019. And I had actually used this article before. I've covered it. Here is Burning Platform, which is a reprint of the Quillette article. So it is out there. I suggest you keep these things and recall them. I suggest you get Kundera's book. In any case, again, the first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history. Then have someone write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history. Before long, that nation will begin to forget what it is and what it was. The world around it will forget even faster. And I keep repeating this because it is worth repeating. And I need you all to understand, if it is not destroyed, if the history is not destroyed, then it is retold in a new light. Much like, what is it? What's the commie history book? I can't think. Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn's History of America, or whatever it's called. It's just revisionist, communist, agitprop. It's not true. And it's been voted on by historians in universities as being one of the worst historical books ever written, because it's ahistorical. Yet that is taught in our schools, taught to our children. People read that in their 20s and it revolutionizes their life. Why? I don't know why. Because they want to not be evil, because it's harder for them to do the actual work and be good folk. It's harder for them to actually have a relationship with their creator. It's harder for them to look introspectively and say, I'm probably a nasty, horrible person. Maybe I should do something about that. Maybe I should help my neighbor out. No, that's difficult. That takes courage. It's much easier to pick up a book and go, you know what? The past was so evil. People were so horrible back then. I'm glad I'm so perfect today. Yeah, you're just a narcissist is what you are. You're just a narcissist who has your head in the sand, and you would be part of the brown shirts, or you would have been part of the commies who did these horrible things. You just aren't willing to admit it because you have never explored your own darkness, your shadow. You are all persona. You have never sought to seek out what your animus or anima is. That is your masculine and feminine nature inside. You do not have control over your ego. You merely project. And that is the vast majority of people, which is why they are swept away with these ideas. Read Carl Jung's, what is it? Oh man, I can't recall. I'll have to bring it up later at another point. But what is it? The Individual Self or something like that. It's one of his most readable books. It's a little booklet. You could call it. Might be 50 to 100 pages, and it's rather digestible, and it's about why people become ideologically possessed, which Jung was passionate about because of the things that happened during the 20th century. And it wasn't just Nazis, folks. It was the commies like we are seeing now in the United States. And trust me, they have the power. The Nazis don't exist here. It is merely a scapegoat. It says, for a brief period, the consciousness was that the communist experiment had failed. Never again, said the postmodernists and historians. Never again, said the economists and political parties. Never again, said the people of the former communist countries. Never again. In the 1990s, we believed that we were living in a post-mortem era in which all the hidden graves of the 20th century would be exposed, the atrocities analyzed, the lessons learned, lest we forget. We also thought we'd enter a time in which Silicon Valley dream of digitizing all knowledge, had to burp there, folks, from all knowledge from the entire history of the printed and spoken word would lead us toward the infinite free library, the glass house of truth, and the global village of free information flow. The future would be a time of endless remembrance and of great learning. That is a naive perspective, because it is contrary to all human existence. It is contrary to all recorded history. Remember, the printing press was a revolution, but many people died because of it. The internet age is a revolution, and I promise you, many people will die because of it. They are currently being hunted down for their beliefs by our very government. How wrong we were. The metaphor of the glass house has turned into that of a mirrored cube. The global village has collapsed into tribal info warfare, and the infinite library is now a war zone of battling conspiracy theories. No, I don't think the conspiracy theories are battling at all. What's battling are people's ideologies and tribalism because they have no centralized principles. They are not developed beings. They are all persona. You know, I haven't talked about this in a long time, but if you go back to my first videos, my very first videos before I had OBS and could do, articles and whatever else, I typed my stuff out. I basically cut and paste to Word, and I sat there and I was just a talking head in a box. And my message has been no different, nor will it change, because my message is going to be what it is. You need God in your life. You need to stop fighting over this nonsense. You need to develop yourself, your inner being. You need to individuate. That means you need to be you, not some mask of perception, not something that people think that you are because you decide to change from moment to moment. I don't live like that, folks. I am a straight shooter. And I kind of despise folks that are fake, frankly. I tend to see right through it. I didn't when I was younger. I was deceived quite often. But my pain and my suffering has borne fruit because I've endured. And that's what happens. And it's not just borne fruit, it's borne good fruit. It's made me a stronger man, a more well-prepared man. And Lord willing, as long as I can, I will preach, I will talk to you, I will bring up this information, and I will do everything I can to help lead us, our society, with the talents I have that the Lord has blessed me with. I will help lead us to a better future because we are about to hit great darkness. It says the internet has become a tool of forgetting, not remembrance. And the greatest era of amnesia is the subject of Milan Kundera spent his entire life trying to preserve, namely, the horrors of communism. Fast forward 20 years and never again has been forgotten. The Wall Street Journal in 2016 asked, "Is communism cool? Ask a millennial." Last year, MIT Press Club, Communists for Kids, and Teen Vogue ran an excited apology for communism. Oh, man. Tablet announced with some concern a cool kid communist comeback on Twitter. There's a new thread of people giving themselves communist-themed names and so forth. Trans-communist, eco-communist. The hammer and the sickle flag has been reappearing on campus at protests and social media. How could we have forgotten? It says here, in memory of the victims of the famine of 1959. That is in China, folks, where about 100 million people died. Maybe more. We're actually still finding records that the Chinese Communist Party has allowed to be released, and it seems to be actually a greater number than we ever thought. But the communists will tell you this has to happen in order to save the world. Yeah, it says 30 to 70 million. No, it's like 100 million. Easily. And he's saying he took this from the Quillette article. So here we have a vast machine for forgetting. Edwin Morrison writes on historical amnesia, the process of forgetting, and offers a counterintuitive perspective on the internet's role in perpetual amnesia. Kundera is 90 years old on April 1st, 2019. In his central subject, the power of forgetting, or historical amnesia, could not be more relevant. Kundera's great theme emerged from his experience from the annexation of his former homeland Czechoslovakia by the Soviets in 1948, and the process of deliberate historical erasure imposed by the communist regime on the Czechs. Once again, Kundera said the first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history. Then have somebody write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history. Before long, that nation will begin to forget what it is and what it was. The world around it will forget even faster. And this has been happening over and over again for the last decade. It's been going on longer than that, folks, but it has been happening here. You fools who say it cannot happen here suffer from normalcy bias. You need to wake up. It says, I first read the Book of Laughter and Forgetting back in 1987 when I was a member of the British Communist Party. The book shook my beliefs, and Kundera's writing became a part of a process of truth speaking that shook the USSR to the grounds in 1989. In the 1990s, we believed we were living in a post-mortem era in which the hidden graves of the 20th century would be exposed. And I read that portion of this. I'm basically reading the same article, folks, but it's condensed. I'm not trying to get through the whole thing. And again, how wrong we were. This theme is set out in the very first pages of Kundera's Laughter and Forgetting, which Kundera describes a moment in Prague amidst a heavy snowstorm. And again, I covered this, where one of the members was completely unpersoned. If you want to make data vanish these days, don't try to hide them. Just come up with 4 other bits of data that differ greatly and start a data fight. Do you understand the narrative now? Do you understand the propaganda, legacy media's narrative? Donald Trump incited riots. Donald Trump incited riots. If everyone keeps saying it, we all are NPCs because we're all brainwashed. We don't know how to think for ourselves. We are all personas. We have not developed our inner beings, and we are not strong enough to stand up against tyranny mentally, or emotionally. So we believe it. And then the big tech gets the hammer to the president because, well, we can't have the truth be out there. Why do you think they've been censoring him for the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 months? And people cheer for it. They love it. They absolutely love it. Fools. Fools to the last. Every one of you. I hope you wake up. I hope you find some sort of vestige of salvation. But most likely, you'll be destroyed by your own kind, by your own beliefs, by the other woke scolds. They will unperson you. You remember Marianne Williamson, who was running for vice president? I thought she was a little kind of a nutty lady, but I thought she was actually a genuine candidate. She was on Dave Rubin. She's kind of a sweetheart, a very genuine person. Again, thought she had kind of some nutty beliefs, but when she started getting crapped on by the left, she didn't realize how horrible the left was. And she goes, I thought Republicans were like this. Yeah, because you didn't think. You listened to propaganda. You must be smarter. You must think. The left is inherently authoritarian. It always has been. The French Revolution was an authoritarian revolution. I don't care what rhetoric you have about freeing people and whatever else. They murdered, tens of thousands of people? I forget what it is. 50,000, something like that, people at the gallows, at the guillotine. Imprisoned hundreds of thousands, I think 300,000 people. Who knows how many of those people died while imprisonment, or got severely ill or whatever else they suffered. And prison back in those days, folks, was far worse than the nice cushy things that we put people in today. This is why I harp on history. This is why I go back to ancient times. This is why I respect where we come from. Because it informs our future. It says, when we lose not just the data, but the record of who did it and said what in history beneath the nose of contrary claims, or beneath the noise of contrary claims, then we are in trouble. We can even see this in the accusations made against Milan Kundera in the last 10 years, that he was a communist informant, that he was a double agent, that his entire literary canon was the result of a guilty conscience for having betrayed a fellow Czech to the communists. And Kundera was part of the Communist Party. Guess what? He was exiled. See, you can wake up when it's too late. Happened to Solzhenitsyn. Solzhenitsyn found God, though. I see all these people today. I'm going to have Don of Plebeian Media on later, just in a few hours here. And over on my live show, The Ends Justify the Memes. And Don was quite annoyed this morning. And I am thanking God that I have such joy in this time. Because in this hardship, I see the eternal hope that I have in my Lord. And I also see just how right I continue to be, not because I'm, again, guys, I'm not trying to be arrogant or toot my own horn, but because I'm paying attention, but because I'm ahead of the curve on some of these things. And I do think we have some time, but we have, like I keep saying, about 2 administrations, and this whole thing is going to be really, really bad. And I say that because there's going to be court proceedings, there's going to be people that push back and forth, there's going to be stuff to slow this down, but it is coming. It is coming. And so I am telling you now to be prepared. And if I am the last voice on earth, if I am one person out of all humankind calling out in the wilderness, I will be that one person until my very death. I don't care if I have to get out on a rooftop and yell at everybody in a town and go from town to town and preach. I don't care. It will happen. And you should do the same. The confusion and profusion of narratives around Kundera leads us to simply drop the author completely due to the conflict-induced apathy. It has already eroded his reputation. We will never know if what he said in his own defense is true. The argument from apathy goes, so we shouldn't trust anything he's ever said or written, even his indictments against communism, even his theories about historical amnesia as a communist propaganda tool. All of this might as well be forgotten. This is the same argument, by the way. They say, well, someone was a slave owner, therefore nothing they ever did was good. Well, sorry, commies, but you want me to put me in slavery, just with extra steps. I want you to be free as God intended you to be. Yet I am evil. I am evil in your upside down eyes. To get rid of an enemy now, you must, or get rid of an enemy now, you don't have to prove anything against them. Instead, you use the internet to generate conflict, accusations, and contradictory data. You use confusion to elevate hatred and fear until the enemy is either banned from the net, their history rewritten, or erased from the minds of millions through conflict-induced apathy. If the struggle of man is the struggle of memory against forgetting, as Kundera said, then we have the cacophony, I don't know this word, guys. I'm going to have to look it up real quick. Cacophony of the internet, a vast machine for forgetting. This is what happens when you're dyslexic. You can't pronounce anything you don't understand.
Cacophony.
Cacophony. Okay, I have heard of this before. But again, when you read, it's new. So here is the full article over on Sovereign Nations. We were warned about historical amnesia. Now it's happening again. I'm not going to cover the full article. This says it's a 13-minute read. I'm rambling enough to fill 13 minutes. This is a Tumblr blog. Milan Kundera. By the way, folks, if you're offended by bad language, I try not to use it. Although I was in the Marine Corps and law enforcement. It's not like I don't have filthy words come out of my mouth from time to time. But look, you need to get thicker skin. You just really do. This isn't a time to be offended by little unpleasantries, if you would. You need to grow up and be an adult. Stop being a child about everything. It says, in the Book of Laughter and Forgetting, Milan Kundera discusses the attempt of the Communist Party to erase historical events and people, including himself, from the public memory of Czechoslovakia. He believes that the first step in liquidating the people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history, and then have somebody write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history. Before long, the nation will begin to forget, and that it is and what it was. The world around it will forget even faster. But Kundera finds such an attempt the ultimate absurdist endeavor for the constant street name changes and airbrushing of official photographs indicate a desire not only to erase history, but to change it. It says, and this is a direct quote, people were always shouting they want to create a better future. Sound familiar? We have to do this to save the future. Recall when I played you the Project Veritas videos the other day? If you haven't seen them before, by the way, you should be watching Project Veritas regularly. And I can tell you, James is obsessed with exposing the truth, having met him several times. He's a character for sure, but he really cares about presenting people the truth. And he's really sick of the mainstream media, which constantly lies, and they lie about him. It says, it's not true. The future is an apathetic void of no interest to anyone. You need to remember this because this is wisdom here. They always want to create a better future. It's not true. They're not being truthful. The future is an apathetic void of no interest to anyone. The past is full of life, eager to irritate us, provoke and insult us, tempt us to destroy or repaint it. The only reason people want to be masters of the future is to change the past. And you cannot change the past. You can only repent. You move on. They are fighting for access to the laboratories where photographs are retouched and biographies and histories rewritten. And it goes on. Basically, this is all this little blog says. It goes on to talk about the some of the stuff. I'll just go ahead and read it. It says Kundera reflects on standards of European horror of pastlessness. To live without a history is to be nothing. To live with an invented history is even worse, to be a joke. Invented histories, however, have rarely possessed existential problems for Americans. The denial of the past has always been part of the package deal of the American dream. And this is why I didn't want to read this, because I don't believe this at all. If to the European, the past offers spiritual ballast in the face of the congruent and the unknown, to the American and discardable dead weight, cut one's losses, and has been pragmatic, even romantic creed of our greatest fictional heroes. Think only of Huckleberry Finn, Gatsby, John Wayne, and countless westerns, for whom name and address changes symbolize a proud refusal to acknowledge social and even physical limits to experience. It is hardly novel to point out the decay of this myth. If one theme pervades post-World War II American film and fiction, it is the slow, sad death of the unattached frontier spirit in an increasingly claustrophobic and standardized nation. But if the spirit has died, its form has survived in the style of constant change which embodies no greater organic principle than change itself. Okay, what the person, the essayist here is missing, I'll tell you what they're missing. It's been engineered, folks. It's been engineered. This push to make America left has been going on for 100 years. And they called it. They called it, and then it was World War II. As I often talk with my co-host Tank on the Ends Justify the Memes, our history begins around World War II. What makes me really certain of things like this too is because I don't watch certain people. I watch certain people often, and some people on occasion. And Michael Malice has made the same point, and I never ever heard Malice say that still recently. I don't watch Michael Malice often enough to know that he has that perspective. Yet he says it. Why is that? Because he pays attention. Because he knows his history. You know, he comes from the Soviet Union. He was born there. I have many friends from the former Soviet bloc. Right here, we're going to read a little account. Valachain Rex, some random Twitter person, this is pinned. I saw this morning when I watched Donna Plebeian Media, but it's worth repeating. It says, friends, whether you realize it or not, whether you believe or you don't want to believe me, the America you woke up in the morning of November 6, 2020 is no longer the America you lived in and loved all your life. Well, the thing I will disagree with that is that the Republic died a long time ago. I've had no illusions. For 15 years, I've had no illusions about the state of the nation. And for 15 years, I've been telling people, and they go, oh, Bill, you're just crazy. Bill, no, that's not how it works. I'm like, no, really, it's how it works. I don't get into, the vaccine's going to chip us or anything like that, The vaccine's the mark of the beast. I don't get into those kind of things. What I get into is what the elites actually say that they're doing. And they do. They say it. They print it. They put it out there. So, let's look at this thread. Just like my father's eyes witnessed the communist takeover of the democratic Romania in 1946 when the communists first cheated in their elections and took over the government, the sun, not the hammer and the sickle, was the communist electoral symbol. And just like after a life lived in fear and deprivation of freedom, I suddenly found myself a participant in the 1989 anti-communist revolution and the return of democracy in Romania after 43 years of communism. So have you in the past months witnessed the end of the American age of liberty and the beginning of radical change in the history of the country? No, this is long coming. This feels like this to many people because they don't know. They weren't aware. I'll be 40 next month, guys. I was aware of this since I was 25. Yeah, I've had a long time to come to terms with it. Unfortunately, the change won't be for the better. Like the one I lived through, it will be for the worse. Like the one my dad witnessed in his youth. What lays ahead of us isn't going to be easy. It's been long said, and history proved it time and again, that people can sometimes vote their way into socialism, but they always need to shoot their way out. Sooner or later, patriots always need to put their lives on the line and sacrifice themselves for freedom. And it says, I have faith in God that eventually good always triumphs over evil. No, God will win in the end. Evil, folks, is the norm and will always triumph over good. Again, you have to have the proper perspective. You have to understand the world that you live in. This is the kingdom of Satan. The God of this world is Satan. You must understand this. Evil triumphs here. It is the next life. It is the world to come. It is the world that is promised, that we live for, that we in the faith live for. God wins in the end. He does. I promise you. And you cannot be me here when everyone's all over the place, all over the internet, completely depressed, completely heartbroken. I watched my friend Yiz the Eunuch, who has a much larger channel, but not particularly huge or anything, make a video the other day where she was quite depressed and defeated. Don was, annoyed this morning. I keep seeing these things time and time again. I'm watching Tim Pool go off about these aren't leftists, these are authoritarians. And it's like, Tim, the left has always been authoritarian. Wake up, folks. Get your mind right. Renew your mind. Repent. Look toward the light. We live in darkness, but we head toward the light. There's great hope, but only if you see things properly, with the proper eye and the proper ear to hear. Sometimes it takes just months, sometimes years, sometimes, like in the case of my old homeland, it takes generations, 43 long years to be more precise. We have two choices ahead of us. Wake up and take action now, or comply and let your children and grandchildren bleed for your liberty decades in the future. Most of my father's generation complied. I'm not telling you to comply. I'm telling you, don't fight. Those aren't the same thing. Fighting is sure death. Being peaceful, that's a revolution, my friends. That's true courage. They believe the communists who cheated in 1946, in the 1946 election, will be defeated in the next one, and everything will go back to normal. After all, they said it was possible for the party with only 1,000 registered members to win again in 4 years. Guys, we've had a mono party in the United States. We've had a mono party in the United States for decades. At least since the 70s. The Democrats actually invaded the Republicans when they came over. They were the neocons. They were all Trotskyites back in the day. You guys don't know your history. This shouldn't hurt anybody's feeling or be surprising at all. What it should be doing is informing you that things are ramping up, and we need to start building our own communities, and we need to cluster together. We need to unify better. We need to understand that we can be individuals, but the collective still exists. We are social creatures, folks. The difference is I want things decentralized, right? I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't go to my neighbor's house and tell her how to live, right? But you know what I will do? I'll give her a ride when she's got to go pick up her car at the dealership. I even went the way that she wanted me to take, which was a bunch of back roads, which was ridiculously long. We had to sit in front of a train, wasted about an hour of my day. But you know what? Oh well. Oh well. Because that's what we do. But in 4 years, there wasn't another party left around but the Communist Party. All other parties were declared illegal, and their leaders were either already executed or about to die after being interned in re-education camps. They believed when the gun registration laws was passed in 1947 that it was okay to comply because it was passed just to prevent criminals and right-wing fascists of the old Iron Guard to hold their guns. Bring that up because I'm sure that's going to be of note. My father's generation registered their guns, and the communists came later on the same year and confiscated them. Only single and double barrel shotguns were left legal, and only after paying a tax and joining the National Hunters Organization as the sole legal reason to own a gun. They believed the Communist Party press and radio propaganda tell them that these small groups of anti-communist militias who refused to surrender their guns and started fighting back in the mountains were right-wing fascists and terrorists. Later that same year, my father's generation believed the anti-communist protest and attacks on the government palace was perpetuated by groups of right-wing students. Any of those sound familiar, folks? When in fact, those who led the charge were responsible for the violence were communist provocateurs. And it's justified for them. You know, it's a joke. My show, the name of my show, my live show is a joke. The ends justify the memes because memes are so prevalent. But the reality is what I'm talking about is how leftists will justify all kinds of evil and atrocities and horrors because they don't understand this. They don't understand that they are evil. They say you're evil. They are justified in their evil, though. No, it doesn't work like that. Principles remain the same. Truisms, truth is always the same. There is no postmodernist nonsense. Morality is not subjective, folks. If morality is subjective, if you want to go with some Sam Harris stance on morality or whatever, then there is no morality and you may do whatever you want. Or as Paul the Apostle put it about if there was no resurrection, go eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow we die. The communist police raided the University of Bucharest dormitories, arrested 1,000 students under the charges of terrorism and sedition. Then the following day, the Secretary General of the Communist Party went in audience to the royal place. Isn't that interesting? Sedition. We're talking about sedition and insurrection right now, right? The communist leaders told young and very proud head of state, King Michael, "You are responsible for the attack. The students were just listening to you. Abdicate and leave the country, or in 24 hours, we will execute the students we arrested yesterday." See how that works? That's called terrorism, folks. Threat of violence in order to get political gains. The king chose exile to save the lives of 1,000 young students, most of them same age as he was at the time. Well, that was pretty noble. Thus ended the democratic parliamentary kingdom of Romania, and the country became, for the next 43 years, People's Republic of Romania, later renamed the Socialist Republic of Romania. You want to hear about Romania, folks, and communism, go watch V. Go watch V. I know a lot of people don't like V because he's got an accent and an odd voice. But he's quite insightful, and he'll tell you what communism was all about. He lived through it. Any part of these stories above sound familiar to you? Blatant in your face, election, cheating, etc. Communist agitators posing as pro-democracy protesters working hand in hand with the Communist Party-controlled media in order to frame the opposition, blackmail its leaders, and illegally remove the head of state. Now, I know what all the commies say. They'll sit there and go, oh, no, it's not communism, it's corporatism. Folks, you're arguing over semantics, literally. The definitions and meanings of words that don't matter because the principles are the same. They apply the same. The actions, the processes may be slightly different. The outcomes are the same. Authoritarianism. My father's generation complied and didn't object to anything. Lots of people who oppose communism believe the Americas will soon get in a war with the Soviets for liberation of East European communism. All they had to do, they thought, was stay put and wait for the liberating GIs to arrive. Yeah, no one's going to come and save you, folks. I hate to tell you, but it's true. They never came. So my grandfather's generation lived under the communist yoke all their lives until my generation gathered the courage to get out in the streets and paid the price for liberty. Now, why could they do that, though? Why could they do that? Because communism destroys economies and the government actually becomes crippled. And also, of course, we here in the United States, through Reagan, entered an armed race, which made the communists have to keep spending to try and keep up with us, which we knew it was a strategy to bankrupt them. The price of liberty was 2,500 young lives. Are we going to do the same thing my father's generation did? Do nothing, comply with the communist demands, and pass the burden and the blood price of freeing our country to the children and grandchildren? Are we going to stand up right now for our stolen liberty, refuse to comply, organize, and take back our future as free Americans for ourselves and future generations? Well, I don't think we have to do it through violence. I just don't. Gandhi was quite effective. Now, India entered a period of communism afterward, but they got over it. But the thing is communism only proliferates with censorship. It only comes about with basically unprincipled folks, people who use violence against you because they're justified. I'm going to play this little clip from Carl Benjamin, or other known as Sargon Akkad's Lotus Eaters, because the tweet he brings up here, I actually wanted to bring up. It's been deleted now, but the person is still on Twitter. So double standards, as always.
See why? Because they frame everything in race. Anyway, going on, we can look at we can see into the minds of the insane Twitter activists. I love it on Minds.com. This has been given an age limit because this is an insane series of statements that I didn't run these ones past our resident.
I don't know why this is so blurry, folks. I can't really do anything about that. But this is, let me see if I big screen it, if it does anything. But this is Arthur Chu,
psychologist, which is Josh, who is qualified, a master's degree in psychology. So, but I don't think you need to be an expert to be able to establish what the problem is here, right? So Ashley Babbitt was the woman who was shot during the Capitol protest. She wasn't armed. I don't think that she looked like a present threat to the police officer, but I'm not saying that
she was a trespasser.
Yeah, I'm not saying that in the circumstances there may not have been reason for him to be sufficiently afraid to discharge his weapon. Now, I'm not condemning anything or endorsing anything. I'm just saying these are the things that I believe happened. But Arthur Chu definitely has a position on this. Now, Arthur Chu is an insane radical leftist who first came to my notice because of his opposition to Gamergate. And so it's interesting how
I found the reason. Here, 1 second, folks, while this refreshes. Arthur Chu basically talks about Ashley Babbitt as if she's a horrible person, is what happens. I don't need anything that high quality. Just enough so you can see it, folks, is what we really want here. Yeah, we're going to skip that ad.
So
we're going to jump up here to 13 minutes and so. Let's look at real quick as that tries to load up.
It was one of them.
Here we go.
The Nazi is the opposite of a person. Therefore, our morality to them must be reversed.
So here it says, Ashley Babbitt feeding the worms is one of the few good things that happened as a result of the Capitol protest, in parentheses. Yet we had riots of peace all summer. right? And if you feel the need to mourn her Nazi butt, it'll be easier for both of us if you unfollow me now. Well, you're a gross person, Arthur Chu. I don't like any of the death. I don't like also though, lionizing and idolizing criminals like George Floyd as some hero because he died by his own hands, mind you. When a bullet goes through the fatty tumor of a Nazi has in the space where a human being would have a brain, nothing is lost. A pile of meat that moved and spoke and acted like a person was made to stop moving and thus could no longer fool people into thinking it was one of them. A Nazi is the opposite of a person, and therefore our morality to them must be reversed. To hate them is to love, to harm them is to heal, and to kill them is to bring life. Arthur Chu's probably never read this quote, nor would he have any understanding of it. Because the wicked don't understand, folks. Go to Sargon's Lotus Eaters. The left is radicalizing against MAGA. You can watch the full clip. Again, I just use this because I couldn't get the tweet. I do have Julian Castro, though. In 2019, a man shot 23 people in El Paso claiming to be inspired by Trump's words. It was the deadliest attack on the Latin community in modern history. It's a shame some lawmakers didn't see Trump for what it was until we were put in danger themselves by his actions. Well, I seem to recall about a week later, a lefty went out in Ohio and shot a bunch of people too. And right before that, over in New Zealand, there was a little place called Christchurch where an eco-terrorist did a very similar thing because there were too many people on Earth. I actually watched the video of that and read the man's manifesto. Wasn't what the news told you. He was a lefty, folks. He believed the world was overpopulated. He believed that there were too many people. He went after Muslims, not because he hated Muslims. He went after Muslims because they have big families. That's what he said. I want to ask Julian Castro, though, since he just ran for president and pandered to the Hispanic community, what he thinks about this, the congressional baseball shooting that was inspired by Bernie Sanders. Should Bernie Sanders be locked up? This actually was an attack on people in office. Congressional baseball game for charity in Alexandria, Virginia. James, I'm not going to say his name, actually. I don't think we should be doing that. Shot the U.S. Majority Whip, Steve Scalise, the U.S. Capitol Police Officer, Crystal Grenier, and Congressional Aide, Zach Barrett, and lobbyist, Matt Mika. You remember when I believe it was certain people of the Religion of Peace shot a Congress lady a few years back? Remember that? Yeah. A 10-minute shootout took place between the assailant and the officer from the Capitol and Alexandria Police before officers fatally shot him. He died of his wounds later that day. He was a left-wing activist from Belleville, Illinois. While Scalise was a Republican member of Congress, the Virginia attorney concluded that the man's attack was an act of terrorism fueled by rage against Republican legislatures. That it was. And it was actually directly incited, if you want to use the leftist language, by Bernie Sanders. Though I believe that the only actions that are responsible, or the only people responsible for the actions, are the people themselves. I was going to cover this, talking about Solzhenitsyn in the further context of the quote, but I am getting long. So I wanted to just show you one last thing, and that is this. Ezekiel 33. Against the word of the Lord came to me and said, Son of man, speak to the children of your people and say to them, when I bring the sword upon the land, and the people of the land take a man from their territory and make him their watchman. When he sees the sword coming upon the land, if he blows the trumpet and warns the people, then whoever hears the sound of the trumpet and does not take warning, if the sword comes and takes him away, his blood shall not be on his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet, but did not take warning. His blood shall be upon himself. But he who takes warning will save his life. But if a watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, and the people are not warned, and the sword comes and takes any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but the blood will be required at the watchman's hand. And this goes on. But folks, I'm trying to be a watchman for you. I've heard very few people. A lot of people have said they don't want the violence. I've heard very few people, though, explain why. I explained to you why yesterday in my quick shot segment, which was longer than I intended, but hey, it happens because I'm long-winded. But understand this. Understand who has the power. I'm warning and telling you what's coming, but it's not in defeat. Trust me, I am not defeated. I'm quite joyful. What I am telling you, folks, is important, and you need to tell others. If you know and you are aware, take that warning of the prophet Ezekiel to heart and warn others. If they are swine and, you cast your pearls before them and they want to trample and tread it under their feet and drag you with it, then that's your discernment to tell. I don't talk to ideologues, folks. An ideologue won't listen. They can't hear. They're deaf, dumb, and blind. They just repeat things. They're NPCs, right? But know that there is hope. Know that you have time. Know that you have time before this full-on comes in. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think you have some time. We're going to see this unravel over the next administration or two is what we're going to see. I have old friends coming to me about, guns and thinking guns are going to be confiscated and whatever else. Well, your sheriff is going to be the one who really has to do that, or they're going to really have to amp up the ATF. And that's going to be a big question because there will be people who will defend themselves. I promise you, when that starts happening on a wide scale, there's some pretty wild Americans out there. We'll put it that way. We'll be reading headlines. Florida man. Anyways, folks, that's all I got for today. I hope you enjoyed. Hey, go check me out later on the Ends Justify the Memes. We'll be live at 6 p.m., so about an hour after this post. And then also over on DLive, the Ends _Justify _memes. You can find me also on locals at all _minus_1. Where I can put up my shorter segments there, and of course I can repost from other places. I'm also on Rumble at all-1, and we'll be working on other alternatives over the next few months as tech censorship will not get any better. With all that, folks, God bless you. Keep your head up and be well.